So in our last class, we left off with the Sanctus. We went through the first part of Mass, the offertory, the Sanctus, how the server has to bring the bells back with him, unless in some churches the bells are kept on the steps. And you have to be careful when you bring the bells from the cruet table that they're not ringing in your hand. You just carry them carefully, and as you kneel, which you would be kneeling right here, on the right-hand side, when you come back from presenting the cruets, you set the bells down. Now, the server is kneeling there. After the Sanctus, he bows over, bow number 2, finishes ringing the bell, comes up to an erect position, signs himself, sign of the cross, and just kneels there, his hands folded. He's going to kneel there up until the priest puts his hands folded or stretched out like this over the host and the chalice, which is called the Hunc Igitur, is the name of the prayer in Latin. So for that, the server rings one bell. Now that one bell notifies the parishioners, the people attending Mass, that the consecration is about to take place. That is an important bell. Now you're kneeling here on the right, and the priest, you will not be able to see everything, but you should be able to see from where he's holding his hands here to where he joins them, and then you can see the movement of the elbow and the forearm where he's putting his hands over the chalice. So be attentive for that, and be careful because there's a space of time before that not to be daydreaming, but to be paying attention, ready to ring the bell for the Hunc Igitur. After the server rings that bell, without setting the bell back down, he has it in his hand, he stands, and he turns and approaches the middle and then comes up kind of at an angle. You don't need to go to the middle and genuflect. The consecration has not yet taken place, so the server just goes right up and kneels onto the top step of the platform. Now in some churches, the platform is short and there may not be enough room for the server to kneel on top, so some priests may tell the server to kneel one step down. But here we have the server kneel on the top to the right of the priest. So he has the bell, you can set it down, and he's kneeling there until the priest, after he raises his eyes with the host in his hand, he bows over, blesses the host, and he says the words of consecration. So the server will bow down for this, but he has to be attentive to the priest. After he says the words of consecration, the priest genuflects. The server rings the bell, then he takes the sacred host, that has now been consecrated, elevates it a little above his head, the server rings the bell again, then he brings it back down and genuflects. As he's genuflecting, the server rings the bell again. So you've got 3 rings of the bell. Ideally, they would be of equal length for those 3. Now, while he's doing that, ringing the bell with his right hand, with his left hand, he raises the chasuble of the priest. Now, some servers will do this where they raise the chasuble real high. And if I may show a side view of the priest, for example, if the priest is standing here, the chasuble comes down, it's raised a little bit. You don't want to raise it real high, so the chasuble is just elevated a little bit while the priest is elevating the host, and the same thing while he's elevating the chasuble. As soon as he brings down the host from the elevation, then the server lets go of the chasuble, the priest genuflects, he rings the bell the 3rd time. Now, the custom here is for the server to bow deeply, a bow number 3, while the priest says the words of consecration. So usually when the priest blesses the host, then the server will bow over and be attentive for the priest genuflecting, ringing the bell, elevating and ringing the bell. Look at the sacred host. There's an indulgence for saying the ejaculation, "My Lord and my God." And then as the priest brings the host down, you let go of the chasuble, he genuflects, you ring the bells the 3rd time. Now, he takes the chalice. Same thing. He's saying the words of consecration of the chalice. You bow over, a bow number 3. He genuflects, ring the bell, elevates the chalice, ring the bell, and hold the chasuble. He brings the chalice down, you let go of the chasuble, he genuflects, you ring the bell again. And when he genuflects, you bow. Then after he comes up from the genuflection, you come up from your bow, you'll stand, and this time you'll go down to the middle, so more or less at an angle. You will genuflect to the Blessed Sacrament. You're carrying the bell, so you want to be careful not to jingle the bell when you go down. You genuflect right here, turn to the side, come over, and kneel in your place. So then that's the consecration, serving with one server. We'll go over next time 2 servers. All right, so the server is kneeling at his place. The canon of the Mass continues after the consecration with the different prayers. There's one where the priest elevates his voice a little bit. He says, Nobis quoque peccatoribus, and strikes his breast. You do not strike your breast, because again, you imitate the priest in the signs of the cross and bows when he says things in the out loud voice, what we call the clear voice. But the Nobis quoque peccatoribus is you can hear it, but it's not meant to be loud. So the server does not strike his breast. He just continues kneeling there. And then after it comes to the peripsum, and the priest says that prayer, and then he covers the chalice, genuflex, and he says, Per omnia saecula saeculorum, you respond, Amen. Then he says the Pater Noster, the end of that, said, Libera nos a malo. Then he says another prayer, and at the end of that prayer, towards the end, he signs himself with the paten. You do not make the sign of the cross because it is not out loud. Plus, he's not signing himself with his hand, but with the paten. Then he puts the paten under the host, uncovers the chalice, and fractures the host. And when he's done with that, he says, Per omnia saecula saeculorum, you respond, Amen. And then he makes the sign of the cross with a small piece of the sacred host over the chalice, saying, Pax Domini sit semper vobiscum et cum spiritu tuo. Then he covers it, genuflex, and then he says the Agnus Dei. Now the Agnus Dei is a bow number 2, according to this, I believe. So I want to check it to make sure. So the server bows bow number 2. Yeah. At the Agnus Dei, he bows bow number 2 and strikes his breast. At the words Domini, after the Agnus Dei, the priest says 3 preparatory prayers for communion, silently. Then he genuflex, takes the sacred host, and he says the Domini non sum dignus 3 times. During those 3 times, Domini non sum dignus, you ring the bell. So 3 rings of the bell, but the server does not strike his breast. When the priest then consumes the sacred host, the server bows, bow number 3. And then he comes up from his bow, having received the Holy Communion, and he's making his thanksgiving, a brief thanksgiving. The server kneels erect. And then when he uncovers the chalice, so he removes the pall from the chalice right here. So the chalice, he takes the pall off. That is the signal for the server to get up with the bell, come over to the middle, genuflect, and go over to the cruet table, where he puts down the bell and picks up the paten. Then the server comes back with the paten. However, according to this booklet, for one server, the server will go to the side, genuflect on the floor, go up and kneel on the top. Now some servers will kneel down here in the front, but according to this booklet, when you're serving alone, you'll get the paten and you'll genuflect on the floor, go up and kneel on the top, and then when the priest consumes the precious blood, you bow number 3, and after he finishes, brings down the chalice, you recite the Confiteor. And then the priest says the Misereatur Indulgentiam, make the sign of the cross, and then Ecce Agnus Dei distributes Holy Communion. I want to talk for a minute about how to hold the paten. Usually, at most Masses, there will be a distribution of Holy Communion to the laity. When you hold the paten for yourself, you want to make certain that it is perfectly flat and that it is under your chin. Sometimes servers are holding it and they have the paten out away from their chin. So you want to make sure it's under your chin in case a particle of the host falls, so it will fall on the golden plate, the paten. Now, you should never, in holding the paten, put a finger on the top side. If you want to have a second hand under it, that's all right, but you would not put a finger or thumb onto the top of the paten. Do not touch the top. Now, when you go to get the paten at the cruet table, some servers I will see hold the paten like this, and that's all right. But once it has been used for the first time, meaning for yourself, you don't stand up to go with the priest and tilt it. That would be a big mistake. Once it has been used, you want to be careful to keep it perfectly flat. So now, if you're receiving communion, you hold it for yourself. If you're not receiving communion, kneel 1 step down from the top. That way the priest knows you're not going to be receiving communion. Then he will go down, you will stand to his right. So you allow him to go down, and then you'll come around to his right, and you're going to stand walking backwards holding the paten for the communicants. One of the things you want to keep in mind, a couple of things. Sometimes people will come up and have their hands folded. I will just touch the top of their hands with the paten so that they'll move their hands down, so you can slide the paten under the chin. Should be a little bit under the chin. You simply place it under the chin of the priest, of the person, and the priest brings the host to the tongue, and you have the paten protecting for a particle of the host to fall. Sometimes when you're done at the end of a line of communicants and you're going to go back, sometimes at a certain point the priest will see a particle and he will hold the ciborium over. So you hold the paten up at a very slight angle and he'll brush the particle or particles into the ciborium. Some priests will do that, others will not until they get back to the altar. But if he does do that, you'll just hold the paten at a slight angle over the ciborium for him. So you're walking backwards holding the paten, and at the end of the row you follow the priest to the beginning, and once again you do that. Always holding the paten perfectly flat. So those are the main things you want to keep in mind with the paten, how to hold the paten, keeping it flat. After you come back to the altar, when the priest genuflects at the top, if he has already taken the paten, you'll genuflect with him and go to your place right here and just kneel down. Now, if you're with the priest who hasn't taken the paten from you after communions, you follow him to the altar, and you may go up a step or two. He genuflects, you genuflect, and you hand it to him. Then you go back to your place right here.